We got a new segment that we started this week that I just freaking love, dude. And it's where we go through the playoff scenario of individual teams, because I have so many people that ask me, and I know y'all do too, all right, hey, I'm a this fan. What do I need to be cheering for to have happen? So we decided we were going to take an individual team as we get close to the college football playoff and talk about what they need to have happen. Last time I took SMU, David, you took Bama.
Alabama.
And Blaine, you took Notre Dame.
Yep. Correct.
And you took Notre Dame. So this week, David, why don't you start us with
All right. I'm going to start with Clemson. This is what Clemson needs, and this is what they're rooting for to make the college football playoff. And I think Clemson is one of the more fascinating teams here for a couple reasons. Let me just start off with Clemson not making the ACC championship game. Obviously, they're coming off. They have the loss to Louisville. Let's say they finished 10-2. Obviously, you would need to win out in that scenario, and that's at Pitt this weekend. Then you'd get the Citadel, and then you got South Carolina in an out-of-conference matchup, a team that you were just talking about. So let's say you win out, you're 10-2, but you don't make the ACC championship game because that's Miami and SMU. Then in that scenario, you really need Miami to go ahead and beat SMU in the conference championship game. You don't want SMU to get that automatic bid, and you're sitting there with a 10-2 Miami against you with 10-2 from a brand perspective and the way they've been playing. It makes things more messy than it needs to be. Obviously, you, like most of the teams in the country, are rooting for Notre Dame to lose and pick up another loss. You need as many 3-loss teams as possible. So in the SEC, you want Tennessee just to go ahead and beat Georgia, give them that third loss. You want Texas to beat Texas A&M at the end of the season, give them that third loss. South Carolina to beat Missouri this weekend coming up, give them a third loss. And really, you want South Carolina to win all of their games other than when you play them, right? You need South Carolina to look as good as possible to boost that win, which, look, South Carolina looks like one of the better teams in the country right now. I don't know anyone who wants to play them. And then you're pulling for anybody who is playing Bama and Ole Miss. Not that you would necessarily have to have those teams pick up a third loss, but if they do, if Alabama gets a third one or Ole Miss gets a third one, that's going to do nothing but help you. In the Big 12, you're pulling for a similar situation as to what I broke down with Alabama. You want BYU to just go ahead and win that conference and be undefeated. Yep. One team has to make it from the Big 12. Just be undefeated. You don't want Colorado to beat BYU. They're sitting there at 12-1, and Colorado gets the automatic bye, or could play in the first round, but they're 10 and they would be 11-2 at that point.
Both those conferences aren't getting 2 teams.
You don't want that to happen. As far as the Big Ten, again, I'll say it. I think it's going to be very difficult for 4 teams not to make it, and those 4 teams being Oregon, Indiana, the Buckeyes, and Penn State. Of course, you could pull for some scenarios there where someone picks up another loss, but a realistic thing is you could pull for Indiana to get blown out by the Buckeyes, lose by 40 points or something like that. That would at least hurt them from a not strength of schedule, but from an eye test standpoint, right? Okay, but here's what I really want to talk about with Clemson. Let's just say that they pick up that third loss to South Carolina. Okay, and you're 9-3, and now you lost to Georgia at the front end, not a conference loss. You lost to South Carolina at the back end, not a conference loss, and you have that one conference loss to Louisville, and you're 9-3. But Miami or SMU slips up, and you make the conference championship. Well, obviously, you need to go and win that, and you need to be the automatic qualifier who gets in from the ACC. All of that could still technically happen for Clemson right now, and the scenario we would see is in 2023, an undefeated ACC team, Florida State, 2-0 against the SEC. Gets left out of a 4-team playoff, but a 9-3 champ in 2024 in Clemson could technically make it for the ACC.
David, let me ask this about Clemson, because they're in, I think, kind of a weird area of, we talked about would a 10-3 team that got their third loss in the conference championship, how is that going to be viewed by the committee, and would they get a spot as opposed to a 10-2 team that didn't play in the conference championship, whether they be in the same conference or not? Because I'm looking at Clemson, and if we say, all right, Clemson ends up on the year going, let's say they went out and they go 10-2, and they have a win over South Carolina at home in the end, which is a good win right now, but I would say that's probably their only good win, like the win you can look at. If they were to go in the ACC championship game and lose to go 10-3, I don't see a world in which that 10-3 Clemson team would get in over a 10-2 Big 12 team,
right now,
and 11-1 Indiana, even if they get blasted, or a 10-2 SEC team like, let's say, Tennessee or Ole Miss or somebody like that. So is Clemson kind of in that rare category of, hey, even if you go 10-2 during the regular season, you have to win this conference championship game to get in, as opposed to maybe, let's say, Texas A&M beats Texas, like I'm about to go over, and they lose to, somebody Tennessee or somebody in the SEC championship, and you're like, damn, you got a good win, and your losses are to Notre Dame and this, that, and the other. Clemson just seems to be
right now. I think that Clemson could make a case to get in the college football playoff if they're 10-2 and they don't make the ACC championship game and they don't win it. I think they need some help to be there at 10-2, but they certainly could get in just like all the other 10-2 teams across the country we're talking about. They could obviously get in by winning the ACC, and we broke down that scenario. Making the ACC championship game and losing it to either Miami or SMU and being 10-3, I don't know if Clemson would be able to get in the college football playoff at that point. Obviously, the case they would make is, wait. Ole Miss gets to sit home and not make the SEC championship game. Notre Dame gets to sit home at 10. Let's just assume they're 10.
And look at our schedule.
And look at our schedule. And we beat South Carolina to be able to get into the conference championship, even though that wouldn't be a conference win, but they'd be 10-2
It'd be a good win
to finish. The rest of these teams at 10-2 are sitting across the country not risking the conference championship. Why should we be penalized? It's a conversation that we're going to hear from a third-loss team if it happens, regardless of the conference.
All right, great stuff, David. If you're a Clemson fan, that's what you needed to know. I got Texas A&M. First thing I want to say is all the other stuff doesn't matter if y'all handle y'all's damn business. If y'all beat New Mexico State and y'all go beat Auburn and you beat Texas at home, you're in not only in the SEC championship game to play somebody, you're in the college football playoff. So you don't need no help. But just because you don't need no help, don't mean I'm going to turn down help. All right, I got a lawnmower, but if somebody wants to come over and cut my lawn for free, go ahead and do your thing, big dog. So handle your business, but that doesn't mean you can't accept help if they're going to give it to you. So here's what needs to happen. You don't need to worry about what Texas does. You're going to get your shot at them. You need to worry about yourself. So don't worry about them at Arkansas. Don't worry about who they play next. You're going to have a chance to knock them off at home, ruin their hopes possibly, and accentuate what a great year you've had. What you want to root for is 3 losses. You want teams with 3 losses because at the end of the day, when you're looking at the SEC championship, you have 1 SEC loss. All right, so whether it's Bama, whether it's whoever, whether it's Georgia if they lose to Tennessee, whether it's Tennessee if they lose to Georgia and then play Vanderbilt, you want teams to have 3 losses because I don't see you losing at Auburn. We know Auburn's a crazy place to play, and they always sneak one out every now and then, but I think A&M's too damn good, which means that even if you lose to Texas, yes, you have 3 losses overall, but you have 2 SEC losses, which is the most important thing when it comes to conference play. Also, you want Tennessee to beat Georgia for that same reason. You want Georgia to have 3 losses. If they have 3 losses, Georgia ain't catching you. Now, Tennessee will only have 1 loss in the league, and that may be who you see if you beat Texas here in a couple weeks, but you would rather Tennessee get out of here with 1 loss and Georgia have 3 than Tennessee to get out of there with 2 losses and Georgia to still have 2 losses because that puts everything in the tiebreaker blender. And then you will maybe the only team in the country that wants this to happen outside of if you're in South Bend. You want Notre Dame to win out. You want Notre Dame to win out. Beat Army, beat, Virginia, whoever they're playing, and look great doing it. You may not even be Catholic, but you maybe should go to Catholic Mass this weekend because you are probably the only team in college football outside of the players in the locker room at Notre Dame that want Notre Dame to win out because it makes you look better. And if we get down into a situation where you lose to Texas, right? And you're like, oh, well, look at our record. That Notre Dame win, if there's any possibility of a team that already has 2 losses to get in, it would probably be y'all. It's still not very likely. But you need to root for Notre Dame for a couple more reasons too, David, because let's say you do end up going 10-2 and you beat Texas and you're in the SEC championship game and you lose it and you go 10-3. So you're not getting that automatic bid. Not only do I think you have a chance to make the college football playoff, I think there's a slight chance that you could host a college football playoff game if Notre Dame can win out because that looks like a great loss. And I tell you what, that A&M's other losses to who? South Carolina? You want them to beat Clemson too. All right, you want them to look great on the way out because those are 2 really quality losses that the committee will look at the end of the year, even though we don't know what they're going to do because they don't know what they're going to do. So that's where I'm at with A&M.
Okay, I love it. Let's talk about the Miami Hurricanes for a second here. 1, if you win out, you are in. Obviously, right now, you're slated to play in the ACC championship game. If you win that, obviously, you are in. But let's say you get to that ACC championship game and you lose that football game. So now you're sitting with 2 losses. The first thing you need to happen, Notre Dame, y'all need to lose. All right, Notre Dame needs to lose, and then you go through everything else, right? You go look at the Big Ten, Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, and Penn State. I mean, at the end of the day, all have 1 loss. The only team that still have to play each other in that is Indiana and Ohio State beside a conference game. And then you go and you look at your schedule, and this is when you get in trouble. Because if you look around the league, do you have a better resume than 6 teams that didn't win the SEC, the Big Ten, and to a lesser extent, the Big 12? And right now, you do not. Sitting out of Tennessee with an 8-1, Texas A&M 7-2, Texas 8-1, Georgia 7-2, Mississippi 8-2, Alabama 7-2, and even Missouri sitting at 7-2. So right now, because the strength of schedule is easy to convince the committee, trust me, it's not hard that you're going to only take 3 at-large SEC teams, even with 1 loss, and I wouldn't be surprised with 3 losses over a 2-loss Miami team. So 3 SEC teams and 3 Big Ten teams, and Notre Dame making in with a large bid, I don't see any room for Miami to make this. So Miami gets on really extremely shaky ground if they do even lose that second loss because your resume is so bad. So if anything, you need carnage at the top.
And also, if you're Miami, it's the same thing as if you're Clemson. You want BYU to win out, win the conference championship. You want Colorado to lose to Utah. You want Kansas State to lose to Arizona State. You want one team coming out of the Big 12. Because, again, went back and did the math last night, and if Notre Dame gets in, I don't think the Big 12 or the ACC, either one of them's getting 2 teams in, but let's say Notre Dame's not in there and one of them's going to get 2 teams in, you would be a lot better served to be in the ACC if BYU runs the table and ends up going 13-0, being that one bid, and gives a team in the Big 12 their 3rd loss. And if you're Miami, that 2nd loss coming in the ACC championship game to, let's say, maybe an SMU, who at that point would probably be 12-1 and get that bye. I think Miami with Cam Ward, with their cachet, would be a 2nd team that was taken out of either the Big 12 or the ACC.
Yeah, so with your scenario there, you were saying Miami goes 11-1. That lone loss at Georgia Tech this past weekend goes to the ACC championship game and loses. So you're 12. You're
11-2.
You're 11-2. That's the scenario you were talking about, right?
Exactly.
Yes. So in that scenario too, you would want the loss to be to SMU.
Yes,
correct.
Well, you'd either want it to be, you'd want it to be to SMU in the conference championship, hoping that Clemson also picked up another loss, an out-of-conference loss to South Carolina.
Yes,
right.
Very true.
So that
you want there to be no gray area in between you and the second or the 3rd team, let's say.
Basically saying, College Football Playoff Committee, please take 2 ACC teams. Hopefully Notre Dame's lost another game and you think they're out of it. Hopefully BYU's gone undefeated and only 1 Big 12 team gets in. And then let's just hope there are, a couple SEC teams pick up a 3rd loss.
And I've seen people, and I know we got to move on, but I've seen people that have said, well, the Big 12 is better than the ACC. You're missing the argument. This isn't a which conference is better situation. That's going to be handled in the 1 through 4 ranking of who gets the bye. This is a which 2nd team in the conference is better in the ACC and the Big 12. This isn't who has the most depth, 1 through 14 or whatever, or 1 through 12. This is that 2nd team out, the ACC's 2nd team. So the loser of the ACC championship game and the loser of the Big 12 championship game if BYU does what they're supposed to do. Which 2nd spot is better to get the only spot left to get in the playoff? So the argument of which conference is better means nothing.
Think about 2 seasons ago when Michigan made the college football playoff and lost to TCU, and the Buckeyes made the college football playoff and lost to Georgia. Down ballot, the Big Ten wasn't that great, but they made up 50% of the college football playoff that year because their top 2 teams were so
Well, David, look at what's happening this year. You could have 4 teams coming out of the Big Ten, and once you get past those 4 teams, it falls off a lot in that conference this year. But those 4 teams deserve to be.
Would you give seriously, what team would you give Miami the nod over A&M 10-2?
To be
in the playoffs.
If they were 11-2 and they lost in the conference
and
championship.
A&M didn't play in the conference championship game?
How bad does Texas A&M lose to Texas?
And how bad does Miami lose in the ACC
7. By 7.
So it's tight both ways. I think because of Cam Ward, they would take Miami.
I'm not talking about the Cam. I'm talking about you.
Oh, what I would do? I think A&M. I think Miami's defense is dog shit.
Okay, what about Ole Miss?
I think I'd take Ole Miss.
And Ole Miss wins out. And
I think Ole Miss can beat 90.
This is where Miami gets in trouble if you lose. Like, this is where we talk about conference championship can come back and bite you right in the ass. I mean, you lose this game, you fall to that 10-13 territory where you, even further than that, you're not going to get the nod over these Big Ten teams or these SEC teams.
Okay, well, how about this one?
That bad.
How about this one, though? How about this one? Texas A&M 10-2 in your scenario. Notre Dame does drop one. They lose to Army or they lose to SC at the end of the year, and they're 10-2. But you're sitting there with a win over Texas A&M, who's also 10-2. If you remove Notre Dame at 10-2 because of the loss that's so bad to Northern Illinois and not having a conference championship, does it automatically withdraw Texas A&M too? Or did they
See,
say?
that's-
Or did they
see,
say that
that's-
happened?
Well,
3
well,
months ago?
again, so like that's a question of, is there a loss that is so bad that you can have that negates a
Head-to-head. I don't think
And
there
I
is.
don't think there is.
I don't think there can
I don't
be.
think there is. I don't. And it's Notre Dame. So,
And it happened at Texas A&M.
but
that win.
where Texas A&M could get away with it, I think, is if they make the SEC championship game and they lose to get that third loss. Yes, Notre Dame beat us 4, but Notre Dame has 2 losses. They lost to Northern Illinois, they lost to Army, and they didn't have to play a conference championship.
Well, they probably won't make the SEC championship game if they pick up a second loss.
No, I'm saying
So
their
you're saying-
next loss is in the SEC championship.
Yeah, so
game.
that
'Cause
would
there's a
only
scenario where A&M.
Oh,
you know
so
what I'm
you're but then it would be
10-3.
Mm.
It would be 10-3 versus Notre Dame's 10.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
See, because that's a tricky situation as well. YouTube, one mission, that's it. Subscribe. That's all I'm asking. I'm easy, right? Not asking too much, not trying to change the world. Maybe a little bit. Just one subscription at a time.